Hello and welcome to the Keepers at Home channel. This week, as I promised you last week, we're going to be talking about the career God. A lot of this has to do with feminism, but we're just going to focus on just the surface level. We won't go into feminism today, but how a career can ultimately impact marital relations. So, let's first define what a job is. A job is a paid position or regular employment. Okay, that's what a job is. And the reason why I'm distinguishing this, and I'll go into the career definition next, but it's an important distinction that must be made because the term career carries more emotional baggage with it as women. So, a career is an occupation undertaken for a significant period of a person's life with opportunities for progress. Okay. Uh, so, a job versus a career. And I think the latter one should be the one we're more geared towards because it has less emotional investment, where a career is something where you're really invested in and seeking that opportunity for growth, for legacy, for sometimes identity. So let's go ahead and start. So we're going to go back to our Titus 2 verse 5, and it says that wives, us as wives, we should be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God not be blasphemed. Okay, so as I was doing research for this, I didn't want to be legalistic and say women shouldn't work, or women should work, or women should work during this time and this time. So we're just going to look at what it says and how you could feasibly do that. So let's go to Proverbs 31. And Proverbs 31 paints a picture of a very resourceful wife who does what she can to help out at home. She even has a wine, she bought a plot of land and starts a wine enterprise. And this woman is really the quintessential wife, as she, whatever she can do to help out, or, even in that instance, bring revenue to her household, she will do that. And her hands are always busy. And it's a great picture to look at and to reflect on, to see how we can enhance our husbands, or how we could serve as a good helpmeet, and what that looks like. But the enterprise per se doesn't necessarily have to be investing in a career. It could be a variety of things, which I will discuss in this video. So, but one thing that can be clear from reading that passage is the enterprise, or the going out of the home, appears to be secondary, not necessarily primary. So our primary role is to be keepers at home, and that is our mandate in Titus. So let's see how that would look like and what that would mean. So very few women worship a job per se, but many women worship career. They say, you know, you got to focus on your career. I even had a friend that lamented the fact that she stayed at home with her child for so many years. She said, always put your career first, were her words to me, as a lesson of what she gained throughout her marital discord and finally divorce. She said, put your career first. And I just, after having Ada and my son, I just thought to myself, that was like the most insane advice that anybody has ever said. But our society is accepting this more and more, to not put God first, but put your career first, especially as a woman. And it's very unfortunate. During the whole COVID uh, pandemic, one of the commentators were lamenting that women took a role where they're back in the home with their children as opposed to being in the workforce. It commented that it set us back years and years and years. So this is the world's perspective. They want you to be engrossed in this idea of career and love your career and put it first. And a famous man, it was on YouTube, a quote, and they asked him what he regretted after his life and all these things he had discovered. And he said, I wish I would have stayed at home. I spent more time at home. And how even harder it is for women with children, or, to spend time at work so much and reflect back on your life and realize that you missed a huge portion of your life because of being engrossed in this career. And many women who are not married, or actresses that really put their career first. Vivica Fox comes to mind. Her greatest regret was that she never got married and had a career. She put her I'm sorry, never got married or was able to have children because she intentionally put her career before all the other aspects of life. Okay. So the easiest way to fulfill that Titus 2 verse 5 mandate is, I'm not saying our role is easy, but the easiest way to fulfill it is to be a full-time homemaker. Simply because having a job introduces an extra stressor. You're going to work, you deal with work stress. It's just harder to manage that and come home and just be in a great mood. And not to mean that you wouldn't have stressors at home, but having a job is an extra stressor. In addition to that, you, according to Titus 2 verse 5, you're called to also be a keeper at home. So it's an extra responsibility, and it's just less time for fulfilling your domestic duties, spending time with your children. Not to mention the fact that, so when we're talking about our submission roles, we submit to God, we submit to our husbands, and also in the same context, if you are an employee, you're called to submit to your employer. So you have more roles of submission than just a woman who is a full-time homemaker. So that's just one thing to consider. So working from home, I would think would be another way to mitigate that. Or a small business, you could spend more time at home. But just because you are present physically does not necessarily mean you're present mentally. But it could be done from the Proverbs 31 wife. But these are just things to consider when you're considering having a career or taking on endeavors while you're in the role as a wife, because our primary duty is to be that keeper of home. Okay, so and once again, okay, so the next thing I want to discuss, sorry, I just got gotten off track. So you have to look at, why do you want to work? So first question I want to discuss, is it to add to your household like the Psalm 31 woman? Most of the work she was doing was for the house, but few could be for revenue, but most of it was to the house. But it was all to be added to your household. So when you're considering, if you have the option, and your husband wants you to stay home, or he's okay with you working. So one of the things to consider is, are you doing it for the right reasons? Are you doing it to add to your household? Okay. If you're not doing it to add to your household, then you might be, your heart might be in the wrong area. So are you working because you fear what others will think of you if you do not work? I went through this after having my first child. I didn't work, but I felt like I had to answer to people why I wasn't working. It being a homemaker in this society presently is looked down upon, and is looked at as a couple of people said, "Oh, you went to college, you got a bachelor's and a master's degree just so you could be at home," or they would make suggestions of jobs I could do. Um, because they felt like maybe I reached this point out of destitution and not because I wanted to prioritize being a keeper at home. So I see the pressure that a lot of women can face when from other, mainly other women, but society as a whole, where people question, why would you stay home? It's a demeaning role, or to be in a submissive role is to be looked down upon. And if for some of the reasons that I will discuss later on, but I did feel a lot of pressure to return to work. And still to this day, people are sending me, they're calling me up. Hey, this place is hiring, this place is hiring, this place is hiring. And I have to constantly communicate and defend why I am choosing to be at home, raising my children and also homeschooling. So, something to consider. If you are going into work because you fear what others will think of you and societal pressure, then that would fall under being the career god. You're ashamed of what society is going to think of you. So the next one is, do you feel that you have a career to have a purpose or an identity? If so, that could be problematic. That is problematic because our identity should rest fully on the fact that we are children of God. Our identity shouldn't come from a job. And what happens if your license get revoked because there's going to come a time where you cannot buy, sell, or trade? Are you going to, is it going to be hard to give that up, and because this is who you are and you don't want to lose that? I remember reading about, well, I'll give you two scenarios. There's one with an actress named Grace Kelly. She got married to the Prince of Monaco, and she, bam, disappears into royal obscurity and becomes a wife, a mother, and that's pretty much all we heard from her after that. She was a mega Hollywood actress, and she gave it up because she valued the role of being a keeper at home, and that's only what she wanted to do. She didn't want to act anymore. And you contrast this with Meghan Markle and Harry, and how she professes to be a feminist, and how she wants to still be in the spotlight and valuing that role to the point where it's something that she reveres or even idolizes. So that's kind of the two ends of the spectrum in, as far as having your identity from a career or from what you do. One chose to prioritize a family while the other chose to really hold on to that career because that was part of their identity. Okay, the next one is, it profitable? So if you're working a job where you have to pay for daycare, you have to pay for travel, you have to pay for lunch, you end up paying more for take home dinners because you're not able to come home and cook. All those expenses add up to, it's more profitable in most instances to be at home than to be working. When you put all of it down on the paper, your clothes that you spend, part of your wardrobe budget to go to work, makeup, etc., in daycare, easily with most women. I'm not saying with all of the women. Some women are very high earners, but with most women, it would actually be worth it for them to be at home. So then you have to ask yourself, why are you doing something that's not profitable? When we go back to the Psalms 31 woman, it's adding to her household. Even though you might break even, and some of the arguments are, well, you still have a career, you have something going on your resume. You're taking away your energy that you could be spending in the household or investing in your family and giving it to someone else. So you definitely want to make sure what you're doing is profitable. Another point to that profit, is it profitable? A lot of women, they are feeling the societal pressure to have something going on, so they will get into multi-level marketing and all kind of schemes that they are not making any money from. At the end of the day, most of these multi-level marketing operations, you make the majority of your money on selling memberships to other people. So you work for whatever X company, you get more money, more revenue coming in if you're recruiting others. And most of the time, when they're just not geared for that, so you're selling, investing time, resources, and energy into selling this product, and you're doomed for failure. Most of the time, it requires a membership enrollment fee, so you're actually taking money out of your household, you're not adding to it, and it's just a waste of time and resources. So that would fall under, is it profitable? Most of the time, multi-level marketings are not profitable. They're a huge money pit, and they appeal to the woman's ego. You could have your own business, you could be in charge, and so that would fall under the other categories of being under the career God. Or your friends online could see that you're doing something, you're up to something. They won't think you're just a lazy homemaker, which being a homemaker is so hard that it's a lot of work. So you wouldn't be considered lazy, but again, society looks down on being in the home. So that's another point. The next question is it about security? So you hear these nightmare stories about, oh, the woman did not work. She relied on her husband. He up and picked her up, and she had no career. She let her certification go. And you hear all these stories. They're meant to invoke fear and are meant to keep you in that career mindset, to where I cannot sacrifice my career for my husband. And that is a trust issue that you have to pray about, because you do not want to live out of fear. The Bible says that we are not given the spirit of fear, but of sound mind. So you don't want to do it as a way to protect yourself. You're constantly living in doubt or fear, and so you have to protect yourself. And a lot of women, they would even say, I want to go to college to make sure that if anything happens, I will always have my career. And that is bad motivations for working. Once again, the Psalm 31 woman, it's about adding to her household. Okay. Is working a way to have autonomy over your financial decision making? So you can't come together as a husband and wife and make decisions financially. So then you say, fine, I'm just going to get my job so that I don't have to submit to my husband's input about certain financial decisions. I could go shopping, I could buy whatever I want. No one could tell me how to spend my money. And once again, if we're looking at Titus 2 verse 5, it calls us to be obedient. So if we're getting a job so that we could be disobedient against decisions, that's also ill motivations as well. And you end up suffering. Even though you're making more income, you end up spending more, and you also end up tapping into your husband's income. So that's the old montage of my money is mine and his money is mine. So you don't end up saving. You'd be surprised how many two-income households where you have little to no savings because the two people are not working together, So, and then one person is really into shopping, spending their money at their discretion, and it just doesn't work out. So you want to consider the reason why you want to have that autonomy over your financial decisions. Some women actually want the autonomy so that they could be free to leave if they're unhappy in their marriage. It's also a bad motivation. Okay. Is working a way to satisfy your desire for materialism? Many people actually work because of they want a really nice house, and they're willing to work however many hours, even if it deprives from their being a keeper at home, being a mother. They're willing to work as many hours as it takes because they want to have a nice home, a nice car. That is serving the career God. You're now enslaved to that because you're enslaved to your materialistic desires. So you're prioritizing that over your role that God has mandated to you. So just this is not a judgment. This is just searching through your heart to see if your motivations for having a job or a career is pure. So does your husband desire that you work? And that is something to consider as well. Some husbands want their wives to work, actually. Many, I think a lot of more than we realize, do want their wives to work to carry that burden of being a provider. But some husbands do not want their wives to work. So, this is not necessarily a end all be all, but this is just something to consider. Well, why doesn't he want you to work? And if it's something where he says, do not work, that's a different story because then you're acting out of disobedience again. But if it's something that he doesn't want you to do, you should, definitely ask him why and, consider it. And see if you'd be a better asset at home. Some people, they would be a better asset at home, but as opposed to going out in the workforce, and so just something to consider. Not saying that it's wrong if he communicates that he doesn't want you to work, and you just arrive as a couple that he's happy with what you're willing to do, then that's a different story. But if he does not want you to go to work, and you have a house, like for example, my family had pretty much a house full of children, and it would have definitely been better if my mother was at home versus working. It wasn't profitable, and it just took away from our household. So that is something that you want to think about. Next is we have to also think that when we're saying that we want to work and our husband desires that we don't work, what that could be communicating. If it doesn't fall under the other categories, which more than likely it will, what you could be communicating to your husband inadvertently is that he is an inadequate provider, and he's just not providing to what your standards are. And it's very hurtful when somebody says they can do something, and you're just refusing to do it, or you're just not considering it, or you're just making them feel like they're not measuring up, and you have to go out in the career force to do more. So, but if your husband is okay with it, once again, then it's not something to die on a hill over. It's just something to consider and something to discuss with your husband, how he can feel about it. So this list of questions is not necessarily saying if you fall into this category, you're serving the career God. These are just more things to think about. Some of them, which are the questions that I highlighted, those could be whether your motivations are not pure. But these other questions are just something just to ponder over. Okay, so finally, working, just another point, working should not be, so if your husband is communicating that he wants you to be at home, you assume the position that you want to work, you cannot therefore force him to be a keeper at home. So you cannot force him to do your duties, whatever your duties would be as a keeper at home. You cannot force him to do it and say, I'm working full time and I have to come home and do this, this, and this. If he's not asking you to work full time, then you cannot automatically assume that he is to assist you on keeping the home. That's ultimately your responsibility. So if you're assuming this employment route, know that this is something, a decision that you're making, probably after discussing with your husband, but that you're making, and that all the other roles should continue and should be to the best of your abilities. Okay, well, tell me what you think about this video. Again, like, share, subscribe. Keepers at home. Not sure what my next video will be yet, but stay tuned. Thanks again. Bye-bye.